We've had breaking news all week this week on Ariel Sharon out of Israel. His health deteriorating rapidly this week I mean, you look over Yahoo News, there's nothing. Yahoo News is virtually silent on this. You go to the Drudge Report, I'm seeing nothing. There's virtually nothing going on these websites that we go to regularly. But we do actually check out other websites like the Times of Israel. The Times of Israel reporting that Ariel Sharon's condition remains life-threatening. The former PM's family at bedside after hospital confirms he is experiencing a malfunction, of vital organs. So his organs are shutting down, and Israel Today is also reporting that he is looks like he's in the throes of multiple organ failure. So with us to talk about that is Carl Gallups. Carl Gallups is the best-selling author of The Magic Man in the Sky and now The Rabbi Who Found Messiah. And Carl Gallups has done a tremendous amount of research on the life and times of Ariel Sharon. So we've been fortunate to get a hold of Carl, a very busy guy, hard to get a hold of. But here he is. Are you with us, Carl?
I am, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Hey, listen, Carl, what can you tell us about the connection to Rabbi Kaduri and Ariel Sharon? I mean, you've done a lot of investigation into this. It's a sad day for the family, although it can't really be said to be unexpected. He's been in a coma for, 8 years now?
Yes, 8 solid years. And, yeah, thank you for asking me that, Mike. Yes, my book, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, the story of Yitzhak Kaduri, is centered really around not only Kaduri's amazing revelation of a death note that he left identifying the real name of the real Messiah as Yehoshua or Yeshua or Jesus. That was astounding and profound. But it also centers around his revelation of that name, centers around a prophecy that he issued or a prediction that he issued just before he died. And just before Ariel Sharon went into his coma, just a few weeks before, Yitzhak Kaduri, this venerated rabbi of Israel, 300,000 people showed up at his funeral. They had to close the streets of Jerusalem for 2 days. This rabbi said that Messiah's name was Jesus and that Messiah would not come until Ariel Sharon had died. Now, and my book outlines all of this in detail. I kind of just collapsed the story together there and ran some things together. It's much more complex than all of that.
Right.
But for the purpose of this quick radio program, that's the story. And so a few weeks, I was 10 or 11, 12 weeks after uttering those words, Ariel Sharon went into a coma in January of 2006. And in January of 2006, just a few weeks after Sharon went into a coma, Yitzhak Kaduri died.
Wow.
In January of 2007, a year later, the death note was revealed. And so we've been now waiting, seeing what's going to happen to Ariel Sharon. And here we are. What was the first news on the first day of the brand new year happens to fall in January 2014 that Ariel Sharon is on his last leg and may not make it but another 4 or 5 days. That was the news of January 1st, 2014, 8 solid years later. It's just amazing, Mike.
So what are you trying to tell us now that the rabbi who had between 200 and 300,000 people come to his funeral, the rabbi who was so adored by the Jewish community in Israel and around the world, are you trying to tell us, Mr. Gallups, that this rabbi became a Christian?
Well, that's all up for debate. I do know this. My book and the movie that was made about my book, the documentary movie, we actually have film footage in the movie of students of Kaduri's. Kaduri ran a rabbinical training school. In Hebrew, it's called a yeshiva. In his yeshiva, there are students, and I'm talking about these are men 40, 50, 60 years old. We're not talking about 20-year-old kids. These are older men, mature men who are on film saying that Kaduri taught in his yeshiva for years that the Messiah was Yehoshua. Now, he wasn't evangelistic. He wasn't like a Baptist or an Assembly of God or, something like that. But he had just been studying the Scriptures and claimed he had revelations that this was the true Messiah. So now, people have asked me the brilliant question you just asked me. So does that mean he became a Christian? And my answer to that is, well, if you mean did he become a Baptist or an Assembly of God or a Catholic or whatever and go down and sit in a pew with stained glass windows. No, he was a Jew. He was an Orthodox Jew. I mean, he was all of his life deeply into the mystical practices of Kabbalah, which a lot of rabbinical Jews are. Some even believe the Apostle Paul was into that because of some stuff in the New Testament. But the bottom line is, he was an Orthodox Jew who came to the revelation and or realization that the Messiah was Yehoshua, Jesus. The same thing that happened to the Apostle Paul, for example. So, I don't know. I don't know if he surrendered his life to Jesus Christ as Lord, as we evangelical Christians in the West would say. I don't know. But he did say, and he did proclaim, and if this note is authentic, and my Bible discusses all the possibilities that it may or may not be, I'm sorry, my book discusses all the possibilities that it may or may not be. If this note is authentic, and he did proclaim this in his yeshiva, he was proclaiming the truth, as you and I know it, that Jesus is Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah. Now, people have asked me, yeah, but some of his prophecies, are just really screwed up, and they're just wrong. And he said that Messiah, was in Israel now and was just waiting to reveal himself and all these strange things. Well, I document all that in my book. I talk about it in the movie. I examine all the possibilities. But here's what I say. Listen, God does not have to use a first-rate, top-drawer prophet, as you and I would think of Daniel and Jeremiah and Isaiah. Listen, God has used a donkey to speak. Now, I'm not calling Kaduri a donkey, please hear me. But he used right. Balaam, a false prophet, Balaam. He used Balaam to speak truth when it came time. He used a donkey to speak. He used a burning bush to speak. He used a mountain on fire to speak. So he could have used Kaduri, the most venerated, adored rabbi in the world, and especially in Israel, right before he died, to speak to the entire Jewish community in these last days. That would not have required that Kaduri be a perfect prophet or a perfect Christian who sat behind stained glass windows on a pew. It just means that God reached down and touched the heart of a rabbinical Jew who was adored by Jews all over the world and who would have a worldwide platform for years to come. And so that's my answer. I don't know if he was a Christian. I certainly don't think he was a top-drawer prophet, a biblical prophet. However, that doesn't mean that he cannot utter the truth. And by the way, Mike, the two things he said, Messiah is Jesus, well, by the way, that's the truth.
Right.
And that he will not come until after Sharon dies. Well, let's say Sharon dies in the next day or two, and Jesus doesn't return. Guess what? Then he spoke truth on that too.
Right.
So that's where I stand on it, Mike. Thank you for asking me.
Well, if he had come back before, while Sharon was still alive, then of course he would have blown that prophecy. But now it looks like Kaduri's prophecy will come true. That Ariel Sharon will die before Jesus comes back.
Well, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, and by the way, Mike, people have asked me, well, does that mean Jesus is coming the day after Sharon dies? Yeah. Well, Kaduri did not say that.
He could.
He could. And in fact, he could come before Sharon dies. Because again, I'm not saying that Kaduri is a 100% perfect prophet.
Right.
But all I know is that Kaduri pegged Yeshua, Jesus, as the Messiah. And in my opinion, as an evangelical Christian, he nailed it. He got that right. So I'm paying attention to that. Now, I know there are idiosyncrasies regarding other prophecies he made, even other prophecies about the Messiah. I understand that. But I think it's extremely profound that this rabbinical Jewish rabbi, that's redundant, I'm sorry, this revered rabbinical rabbi would proclaim that Yehoshua is Messiah. It's just amazing. And now we're right at the doorstep of Ariel Sharon's death in the beginning of 2014.
Well, we've been talking Ariel Sharon this, Ariel Sharon that, and I suppose we shouldn't just assume that everybody knows who he is. We have a couple of minutes left here. Can you just briefly tell people who is Ariel Sharon?
Ariel Sharon is a mammoth figure in Israel history as well as world history. Ariel Sharon, when Rabbi Kaduri uttered that prophecy in 2005, Ariel Sharon was the 11th Prime Minister of Israel. Ariel Sharon was in Israel. He was a freedom fighter and independence fighter before Israel was ever even a nation. He was a part of what was the pre-Israel's military to reestablish the land of Israel. And so ever since then, he served in high-ranking positions under Israel's first prime minister, Menachem Begin, I think was his name, and served all through Israel's modern history in government leadership roles. He was the director of this and the secretary of this and the director of that, and secretary of the interior, secretary of the labor ministry, secretary of agriculture ministry. Plus he was a military leader and a general and a commander, and he fought in every single major war that Israel ever had up until his death. And he was known, he went by several nicknames. The media nicknamed him the Lion of Israel. Several credible sources, which I have documented in my book, called him, quote, the Savior of Israel. Now, I don't think they necessarily meant he was like God in the flesh, but they just meant that he was being used of God to save Israel. So he was called the Lion of Israel, the Savior of Israel. And you and I know those are kind of messianic terms, and of course I deal with that in my book. So he was a huge figure of a man, and when he slipped into his coma, you would have expected he would have died in 2 or 3 months at the latest. But as a matter of fact, he has lived 8 solid years.
Well, and I've read The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, and it's a fascinating book, but even made more so now with the events coming out of Israel. With this death watch now, the family is surrounded. Israel Today and the Times of Israel paint a picture of his family surrounding his bed now, watching him as his organs begin to fail one by one, and we know what's happening there. The life support systems are no longer able to keep this man alive, and he's about to die if he hasn't died already.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. And it was amazing to me that the family said on January the 1st that he probably would only live 4 days. Well, if he dies on January the 4th, wow, that was the exact day in 2006 that he went into his coma. So that means if he were to pass away on January the 4th, 2014, that means he would have lived in a coma exactly and precisely 8 years.
Well, it's fascinating too. And we're really short on time here, Carl, and I appreciate you coming on. But it's fascinating too that all the family was there. They were getting ready to do a sort of celebration, or I'm not sure they would be celebrating it, but they were getting together to mark the anniversary of his entering into this coma. And it's just coincidentally now all the family's there to mark that event. So now they may be there now to witness his death. And I don't know, I guess there's some sort of a plug that can be pulled here. Somebody has to make the decision to watch him die by stopping the life support.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So this will all be extremely interesting to watch, and it ties directly to my book, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, the story of Yitzhak Kaduri and Yitzhak Kaduri's prediction. It's the only book in the world on this topic, and the documentary movie that was made about the book, the only movie in the world on the topic. And it's, it's unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah, we'll put links to all that material on this video. Thank you, Mr. Gallups, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And we'll talk to you again, hopefully real soon.
Okay, good deal, Mike. It's my pleasure. God bless you, and God bless the P.P. Simmons audience.
P.P. Simmons Television, my name is Mike Shoesmith. We'll catch you guys next time.